Welcome back to another edition of Black Ice Reality Check. We have a special guest here, Marvin Lashever, a.k.a. we call him Uncle Marvin at the studio. He is part of the last known surviving generation of the Holocaust. Is that right?
Yes.
Marvin, I'm glad to have you on here. We
appreciate you having me on.
We've had great hallway conversations.
Yeah.
He is the CFO of Sticky Paws Studios here in Vegas. And me and Marvin always talk it up, and I'm like, I have to get him on the podcast. This guy, I mean, we got to write a movie when we're done.
Yeah, okay,
right?
I'm in.
So you survived. So let's talk about your background, because it was so interesting to me, because growing up, we study what we can. School's only going to teach you so much.
Right.
Hollywood's going to tell you what they want you to see.
Correct.
And when I had a conversation with you, there was so much stuff I didn't know. And maybe you can kind of talk about, where you were born and the whole Holocaust situation.
I was born at a very young age. Yeah, I was born in Krakow, Poland in 1944, June of 44.
Okay.
And it was probably toward the end of the war, because the war ended, as everybody knows, May of 1945 with the Germans. And it was rough. It was really rough, from what I understand from my parents, because I was just an infant. But the stories that we went through was incredible.
So did they came into Poland, right?
My parents were born in Poland also.
So when the Germans came, they came into Poland when they
1939.
And
September of 39.
So when did they? But they didn't take your family until when?
Well, we didn't get caught. My parents didn't get caught with me until the end of the war, after I was born.
So you were in a concentration camp as an infant.
We were on our way. We weren't actually in a concentration camp, but we got caught after I was born. We got caught by the Germans. We were put into the cattle cars. And we were on our way to Auschwitz.
Wow.
Yeah. And as you know, or most people do know, that the Russians were making their way westward into Poland and overtaking the Germans and pushing them back into Germany. Well, as my parents told me, that as the train, our cattle car train, pulled into Auschwitz, they were full up. They didn't have any more room. Now, Auschwitz was a work camp. They had a big sign as you entered the camp, Arbeit macht frei, which translated means work makes you free. And we pulled in, and they didn't have room for us, because it was just a work camp. They put us back on another cattle car and sending us to the death camp, which was Treblinka, which is further northwest of Auschwitz in Poland. And as the Russians were making their way westward, we were on the train going to Treblinka, which was the last stop. The Russians had bombed the tracks, and the train had derailed. And my father grabbed me and my mother, and we ran into the woods, and that's how we escaped.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So how did you? So this happened in Germany,
Poland.
Excuse me. So how did you get from Poland? You guys came to Canada. You mentioned you came to Canada,
Well, we were crossing the border from Poland to Russia, which was still, some of it was still controlled by the Germans. And so we had to cross the border. We had to be very, very quiet. And I'll tell you a real quick story. As we were crossing the border, now keep in mind, I was an infant.
Right.
I was hungry. My mother had nothing left to feed me. They were starving. And as we were crossing the border, you had to be very, very quiet. We were with a large group of people, also refugees that had escaped from that train derailment. And as we were crossing, I started to cry as an infant. Well, one of the men that was in our group went to cover my mouth and my nose, and he had almost killed me. And my father jumped in and took care of that situation. And we crossed into Russia, and we had walked from Treblinka, close to Treblinka, through Siberia to Moscow. Yeah,
But you guys went through Siberia?
through Siberia, yeah.
How did you, I mean,
Because my parents thought it was safer to go to someplace where very few people went. And they thought they would be safe.
but did you guys walk through the snow in Siberia?
Snow in Siberia.
How far is Siberia? Is that like?
It's far. 1,000, 1,500 miles. Yeah, yeah.
Was there a bunch of people?
A bunch of people that came with us. All refugees.
So a bunch of people must have like died on that.
Oh, of course. Sure. A bunch of people did die. But we made it. And we ended up back in 1945, at the end of the war, we made it back to Poking, Germany. That's P-O-K-I-N-G. People can look it up. And there was an American DP camp, as they called them, which was nothing more than, it's a displaced persons camp, which is a refugee camp. And it was made up of 99 and 9/10% Jews. And where they reestablished our lives. And they fed us, and they clothed us, and, you know, all the niceties. But it was still nothing more than a concentration camp. It was barbed wire all around it.
Wow.
But it was controlled by the Americans, you know. So it was like a free concentration camp.
Sure.
But we weren't able to leave. And at that time, I believe it wasn't Roosevelt, it was Truman, who had cut off immigration from these camps to America. So we had no choice, but they put us on in November of 1947. So we spent about 2.5 years there. In 1947, they put us on a boat to Halifax, Canada.
And that's on the East Coast, right?
That's on the East Coast, right.
Okay.
Halifax is the first port of entry for Canada. And when we got there, I was, 4 years old? 3 years old. When we got there, they shipped us to Toronto, Canada, where we lived for 9 years.
Now, before the podcast, you had mentioned that they shortened your last name.
Yeah.
Now, I know this because when I studied history, they talked about, you know, the names, they'd cut off like a third of the name.
Right.
Because when they came into the United States, people couldn't, they're like, it's too long, we'll just cut it in half.
Well, I remember the spelling of my last name.
So how do you, can you pronounce your last name?
It's Lashever. It's Lasezwerer.
And so now now it was shortened and it's
Lashever, Lashever.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now, so on your legal documents, it's Lashever.
Lashever. Right.
Interesting. And so you were in Canada for 8 years.
9 years.
9 years.
9 years.
So you must have been 12 when you came to the United States then.
On my birthday, I was 12 years old.
And where'd you guys
June
move to?
14th, 1956. We went from Toronto to New York.
Now, back then, I don't know the immigration laws. Did they immediately make you guys citizens, or did you?
No. We had to wait for a quota. It took 8 years for this quota to open up where our name was called. It's not like today you walk across a border. You had to wait for a quota.
So you guys came in legally.
Came in legally.
Okay, which, you know, a lot of Americans, when I say, you know, I'm against illegal immigration, they say, oh, you're
Don't get me started with that.
yeah. I said, I'm not against immigration, I'm against illegal immigration.
Correct.
Because people like your family that fought, they survived They were true refugees.
True
Okay,
refugee.
there's a difference between, oh, I'm oppressed and I'm a refugee. They're going to kill me, right? Venezuela, they're oppressed. Okay.
They don't know what poverty is.
Right. But hear me out. So you guys came here legally.
Right.
And then when someone comes here illegally, does that irritate you? Does that make you angry?
Makes me crazy.
Really?
Makes me really nuts.
Okay, so you guys...
We waited 8 years because my father dreamt about coming to America. He just wanted to come to... First of all, we had surviving members of our family living in New York. My mother had a sister, and we wanted to be with them. My mother had uncles and aunts. They lived in New Jersey. We wanted to be with them, but we weren't allowed to come in unless we had a number, or a quota number. And when our number was called, we had a choice of coming or staying in Canada. So we chose to move and be with our remaining members of our family, whoever survived.
And when you came, you guys, what part of New York did you move to?
Originally we moved to Brooklyn. We lived there for a very short period of time until my father got on his feet. My father learned to trade. My father's family was a very, very wealthy family in Poland before the Nazis came.
Okay, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I know the story about the Jewish people in Poland and bringing diamonds. Is that a fictionish story, or is that...
No, it's not, but there was a very small percentage.
Very small, okay.
Yeah.
But do you think that the Jews that came from Germany, that came here with nothing, that America was a dream, do you think that, because for the most part, the Jewish community in New York that came up from nothing is very successful. Do you think it's because they came from nothing, or were they already very ambitious, or were they, hey, we're free now, we can do what we need to do to be successful? Why do you think that is?
Ethics.
Work ethics?
Yeah, sure.
Really?
Sure. It was all work ethics. Survival. All a question of survival. Make a living for the family. The men had to make a living for the family.
They had to provide and protect.
They had to provide, protect.
What did the moms do?
Cooked, cleaned. They took care of the kids.
Traditional. Was the divorce rate high back then?
Very low.
Really?
Extremely low. You stay together whether you hated your spouse or not. For the kids. It's always about the kids.
Right.
So listen, my parents have a great life together. They went through a hell of a lot. They fought like cats and dogs. Every family fights, But at the end of the day, they stayed together till my father's dying day and my mother's dying day.
So you guys, what did your father do? So you guys, you were in Brooklyn, but you moved to the Bronx.
We were in Brooklyn for a short period of time. Then we moved to what everybody recognizes as the Lower East Side of Manhattan, right? Delancey Street. It's the Lower East Side where you see the movies with the push carts and all that stuff in the slums. Well, that's where we ended up moving to.
Was that a big Jewish community?
The huge Jewish community. It was huge.
So you guys had your own city, country within a city. The
Lower East Side was known as a very high Jewish community with Orthodox Jews, and they celebrated Sabbath on Saturday, not on Sunday. And I went to religious school. I went to Hebrew, what's called a yeshiva, which is a Orthodox. I had the curls on my sideburns.
Wow!
Yeah,
you had the curls and you couldn't shave.
I was too young to shave.
Right.
I was only 12, but I had the curls on my what they called sideburns or payas, and I went to a Orthodox Jewish school.
Wow!
Yeah, Lower East Side of Manhattan on East Broadway.
That's amazing. So
right by the Jewish Forward. People who are Jewish and live in New York understand. The Forward was a Jewish newspaper that everybody read.
now, what did your father do for business?
My father originally in Poland was, like I started to say, is that they came from a very, very rich family because they were big farm owners, huge amount of land, cows, regular farm. And the Nazis came in and confiscated everything. So when my parents and I ended up in this refugee camp in Brooklyn, Germany, my father had to learn a new trade, and he learned how to be a tailor.
Suits,
everything.
So did he do that in the Bronx, or not in the Bronx?
My father became not only a tailor, he became a specialist as a cutter. A cutter is a specialist tailor. He takes these big swabs of material and cuts patterns, but they're thick patterns with a special saw. And it was one of the only father and son unions that the tailor industry had. And he worked his tail off. He had 3 jobs a day, yeah.
So but now you mentioned something about didn't he own a liquor store? You owned a liquor store.
Yeah, well, this was later on. We had moved from Manhattan. We went back to Brooklyn on Chester Street in New Lots. And my father was still a cutter, a tailor. And then in 1958 or 9, he decided he had enough of being a tailor and he wanted to go into his own business. And he bought a candy store in the Bronx. And so I was, 15 years old.
Now, is that when was the Korean War? This was all during the Korean War.
1950s. 51, 50, 51, 52.
Okay, so he was a tailor during the Korean War here.
Here. No, in Canada.
Canada, okay. Then he came, so now you're...
In 56, we came here.
Okay. And then when you came to the Bronx to have the store, what year was that?
58, 59.
Okay.
Yeah, so he bought the candy store.
So you got to see all the great 1955, 56, 57 Chevys.
Oh, my God. I had one.
Which one?
I had a 1957 Chevy Impala.
Oh, my gosh.
It was a 2-door sedan. Yeah, 57 with the high fins in the back. Oh,
wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My father had it, actually.
That's when you could work on cars.
It was 4-barrel cylinder carburetors.
Yeah.
Easy.
V8?
V8.
Was it a 283?
283.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, did they have the orange Chevy block? Orange that was the engine block orange, or did that come? That was the 60s. They did that.
Yeah, 60s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they kept it a cast iron.
Simple V8. Simple V8 with a 4-barrel carburetor. Easy to start in the cold weather.
Did it have a choke on it?
Had a choke.
Oh my gosh! Now was it shift on the?
It was three on the column.
Oh my gosh! See, a lot of people are watching this have no idea what we're talking about.
No,
right?
I learned how to drive at a 1954 Ford 3 on the column.
Wow!
When I was 17, I started learning how to drive.
Good times.
Yeah.
So now you guys went from a candy store to what?
Well, the candy store my father bought, and everybody, of course, worked. I mean, you had to work. So my mother, my father, we were open from...
So were you guys doing okay? Were you still lower class? Were you middle class? Were you like... you were paying bills and had some money left over?
The candy store started to afford us a little bit more freedom monetarily. We didn't take our first vacation until the 60s.
Wow.
Yeah. We didn't have a car.
Did you need a car back then?
We didn't have
in New York.
Car.
You didn't
Did
need
you
one.
Need one?
Yeah, back then.
Yeah, everybody had one.
But now you don't in New York. You don't need a car.
You do. I would never go on the subways. Are you kidding me?
The cabs, the Ubers.
Are you kidding? You need a week's salary to go into a cab today.
Yeah. See, I don't go to New York.
Forget about it.
Would you ever consider moving back there?
Never.
Why?
It's not the same. It's not the same New York as I grew up in.
tax you to death?
Not only that, it's just the way of life, the way of living. You know, I mean, we had gangs. I was in a gang when I was a teenager. You know,
Was it a Jewish gang?
It was a mix of Italians and Jews. You know,
So you grew up around the gangs.
I grew up with the Italians all my life.
So did you guys get along? Was there
Well, we loved each other.
really?
Well, we loved each other.
So
Nobody bothered us.
So you guys. So you knew what famous mafia groups did you know?
Groups?
Well, which famous mafia ties? Did you know the main guys in the mafia when you were growing up?
Gambino?
You knew them?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Joe, old man Joe. Yeah, Carlo.
You knew those guys.
Yeah.
So did you see them like once a week or?
Once every couple of weeks. We used to hang out in a place called Gil Hodges Bowling Alley, which was the hangout for everybody.
How old were you when you?
I already had moved to Brooklyn, so I was probably around, let's see, 22, 23.
So you were hanging out with the mob.
Yeah.
So I bet you. I know there's things you can't say on the mic, but you saw a lot of it. You saw a lot of stuff that.
Nicest guys you ever want to meet.
But you don't want to cross them.
Don't cross them. Don't insult their women.
What about their girlfriends? So they were married and had girlfriends, right? But their wives knew.
Well, girlfriends were Friday night.
What?
Girlfriends were Friday night.
So they took their girlfriends out Friday night.
Saturday night was wives' night.
And what was the boys' night? Sunday?
Boys' night was the rest of the 5 days.
Man.
Yeah.
But the wives knew about the girlfriends.
Some did, some didn't. They did, as long as they were able to buy their jewelry and their furs and all that stuff. It was no big deal. It was no big deal.
Why do you think it's a big deal today in modern times?
People today take life too seriously.
Really?
Yeah, too much competition. Too much, I got to get ahead. I got to do it now. Instead of just, there's a famous Italian saying, aspet.
What's that?
Aspet. Means take it easy. Slow down.
So when did you, okay, so we're in the 60s now, right?
60s, the best times. 50s were the best times.
50s? How old were you in the 50s, your best time? 18, 20, 21?
In the 50s?
Yeah.
No, I was, let's see, in 56, I was 12. Oh, 59, I was 15, 16. It was the best time.
Those were the best times, really. Not when you were a teenager or you're...
Yeah, the Bronx, yeah, there were good times too. But the rock and roll, are you kidding me? Oh, my God.
You were just loving it.
Oh, my God.
So
You didn't know it then. But years later, when you look in retrospect, oh, my God, those were the best.
And then...
The talent that came out of those years, pre-Beatles, pre-64.
We're talking Chuck Berry?
Chuck Berry.
Elvis.
Well, Elvis was a phenomenon.
Yeah.
But even my own ex-brother-in-law, Tony Orlando.
Yeah, he sung "Tie a Yellow Ribbon Around the Old Oak Tree."
Right,
Yeah,
but he had, in 1959, he had 2 hit records. 1959 with "Bless You" and "Halfway to Paradise."
Did you go to a lot of Tony Orlando shows?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We ended up brother-in-laws.
So you came from nothing to where you're at now, but between 69, so you guys went from the candy store to, didn't you own a liquor store at one time?
Well, my father built up that candy store so well, we started to uplift our economic, financial situation. And my father worked his ass off. He worked from 5 o'clock in the morning till midnight every day. Every day in that candy store. And the whole family, I have a sister also, she chipped in, everybody chipped in, everybody worked. My mother would go home at about 4 o'clock to make dinner. She would come back to the candy store. My father would go home and eat, and he'd come back to the candy store.
What were the hours of the candy store?
from 5 a.m. till midnight.
People were coming in that late to buy candy?
Oh, it was a busy store. Huge. Very busy store.
Wow.
And I learned, I stood behind the counter. I was making, fraps and ice cream sundaes and egg creams. And
Now, you at one point told me when we had a conversation, you started your first business. You owned, was it alcohol or it was booze or what?
I came up with an idea. By the time, probably in the mid-'60s, I came up with it because we were living in the Bronx. And we were only about a block and a half from the candy store we lived. So, and I was looking around, and all these big buildings around us, all residential big buildings, tenement houses, each one was 6 stories tall. And there must have been about 300 families in the building. And I looked around and I said, you know what this neighborhood is missing? I said, a liquor store. I said, if one person from every building, there must have been about 50 buildings around it, comes into the store to buy one bottle, that's 50 bottles of booze a day. Right?
Mm.
I said to my father, we should build it. Because at that time, we were in like a little mini shopping center corner. He ended up buying it.
The shopping center.
The shopping center. That's how well he made it work. So one of the stores was vacant. And I said to my father, let's put a liquor store in there. He looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, listen, and I figured it out for him. I put it on paper and pencil, and I said, here, one person a day spends $4, 50 buildings. We're going to do $200 a day.
Right.
Right? At that time, $200 a day was good business. So he looked at it, he hemmed, he hawed, and he said, okay, let's do it.
And that was your first business?
And that was my first business. I was 18 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
18. But you weren't even 21.
No.
So
it was the license was under my father.
So the drinking age was still 21 back then?
21, yeah.
Now, was everybody smoking cigarettes back in those days?
Oh, yeah, big time. A pack of cigarettes was 25 cents. I remember because I was working at a candy store.
Now, did you sell cigarettes at the
candy store?
At the liquor store, too?
No, you can't.
Oh, you couldn't?
In New York, you can only sell wine and alcohol. You can't sell potato chips, no beer, none of that.
So how long did you have that liquor store for?
I had that store for 7 years.
Now, there was an incident that happened. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I worked that store from 8 o'clock in the morning till midnight every single day, 6 days a week, for 7 straight years. No vacations, no time off, no days off. And you end up burnt out. So in 1973, I said to my father, I can't do this anymore. And he says, well, what are you going to do? I says, well, I got a job offer, and they want me to be a salesman, and, in the eyeglass business. I had already bought a house in Brooklyn, and one of my tenants was in the eyeglass business. And he offered me a job as a salesman for the New York, New Jersey territory. And it sounded very interesting. It was a good draw, expenses. And so I said, you know what, I got to try something new. I can't do this anymore. I had no life, zero.
Now, you told me that you had been held up at the store at gunpoint.
About 4, 5, 6 times.
5, 6 times with a gun?
Yeah, pointed at my head.
And what did you say when people held you up with a gun?
Take anything you want. You want me to gift wrap it? I'll do that for you. Take all the money, whatever you want, take it. You lay one finger on me, it's going to be you or me, or both.
And nobody ever...
They would leave me alone, and they would just take the money.
And they never got caught, though?
No, you can't. The cops weren't. No, it was the area we had our liquor store was an area in the Bronx called Fort Apache. It was the worst neighborhood in the country.
Really?
In the country. They made a movie about it. Paul Newman. made a movie called Fort Apache. And that was the neighborhood I grew up in.
Wow.
Ultimately, in 1973, after I left in July of 73, and they offered me, not only did they offer me a job, now they offered me a position in Chicago to be a sales manager, the optical business. And I said, sure, let me go out, try it out.
Now, were you single?
No, married, 2 kids.
Okay. How old were you when you got married?
21.
How old was your wife?
20.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was normal back then.
Straight out of high school.
So did like 80, 90% of the population get married when they were...
Oh, yeah. That was common. Very common.
And women weren't out sleeping around, partying?
No. Not at all.
So would you say most of the women, the majority of women that got married out of high school, were they virgins? Majority.
Most of them.
And that's rare now.
Very.
Isn't that amazing?
I don't know if it matters. I don't know if it matters.
Well, there's a certain sense of obviously purity is going to be hard to find these days, but you don't want somebody that's been around with.
Well, men weren't exactly pure,
right? But we're not the one delivering the baby. We want to make sure that is that my kid? Is that you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Because now, like a certain amount of custody battles, when they do the DNA, they've had situations where they do these DNA testing. And 45% of the children, it's not the father.
It's all a question of trust,
right?
Nothing more than just trust. You either trust or you don't trust.
Good point. So you went to Chicago.
Went to Chicago. What
year?
July of 73. They gave me 1 month to go try it out, see if I liked it or not, and I would move.
Okay.
And I liked it. I enjoyed being away from New York. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being away from New York. So and my wife and I were not getting along too well. So I figured as a young kid, you know what? Maybe it'll give us a fresh start. We'll go somewhere else. We'll start again, and maybe we'll get closer. Doesn't work.
Did work.
Doesn't work.
And so when you went from Chicago, how did you get out to Las Vegas then? Let's bring us up to what?
I drove. I mean, you mean from Las Vegas?
Yeah. What made you come out here?
Oh, that's years later. We didn't come out here till 2002. After this is my third marriage.
Wow, you've been married 3 times.
Married 3 times.
Third and last?
And the best.
Really?
And I married my best friend.
What differences did you take, or changes or adjustments that you made in deciding who your next wife was going to be? In other words, what did you learn from your past marriages that made this one better?
A woman who tries to control you, which was my first 2 wives. Was a question of control.
So they were being masculine. They were being dominant.
They were being very dominant. But the first 2 wives, excuse me for saying this, folks, they were Jewish.
So a lot of Jewish women are very
controlling. They're from their mothers.
Really?
Yeah. So my last one, this one here, we just celebrated, as a matter of fact, 14 years of marriage. Yes.
And she's not Jewish?
She's Greek.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We just celebrated 14 years of marriage yesterday.
Well, congratulations. That's right, because when I was booking the podcast,
yeah.
I got to tell the audience this.
And we've been together for 20 years.
So I gotta tell the audience, when we were booking this podcast, it was a week ago, I call him Uncle Marvin. That's his name, his nickname. I said, we got to get you on the podcast. He's like, yeah, July 5th. And I'm booking it. And he's like, oh, that's my anniversary. I was like, Marvin, newsflash, it's probably a bad idea to do a podcast on your anniversary. And you probably still would have done it.
I would have.
Because you're a work guy.
I'm a work.
You're here. Like, I see you in the office. I walk by. You're behind your desk crunching numbers.
It's the only way. Absentee ownership does not work.
Well, John's playing poker.
Absentee ownership does not work.
Hear that, John? John is the CEO?
CEO.
Yeah, he's playing the World Series of Poker. I know that comes once a year.
John's the best.
He is the best.
The best.
I have a lot to thank John and you as well, because you guys helped me out when I needed to find a place to do a podcast. I'm giving back, and I appreciate that. And I was like, man, I got to get you on. See, this is the stuff that people need to hear is the truth, right? And I want to shift gears, because bringing it up to modern times, you're a success story. You had nothing. Nothing was given to you. You know, your parents passed away. Obviously, they might have had some stuff, but you grinded.
Well, my father was shot and killed in that liquor store.
Really?
In a holdup I was just going to tell you the rest of the story, that when I moved to Chicago on August 1st, I got a phone call August the 16th in Chicago that my father was just shot in a holdup. So I jumped on the first flight I could get, going back to New York, and 2 weeks later he died. He was in a coma for 2 weeks.
So do you think that he didn't say the same things you said when you were held up? My father was very passive. He didn't. But he didn't
believe in guns. But I carried a gun all the time.
But he didn't argue with the robbers, you don't think?
No, he had a terrible temper.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. You were like, take what you want.
Take what you want.
He was probably...
And it was all over a 70-cent bottle of wine.
77 cents?
70 cents. Bottle of wine that they ran out of the store with, and nobody took anything from my father because he had that survivor mentality. It's mine. You're not taking it away from me because of the Holocaust. So he ran after them. And as he was running, they turned around and put a bullet in him. So instead of just giving them what they want.
And nobody saw a thing.
No. And
then, so how long is your mother, how long did she live for? Is she still?
No, she died about 10 years ago. Yeah, she lived till about 82.
And was she in New York still?
She was in New York, Brooklyn. Yeah, all that time.
So I hear this thing in the community. I know I'm kind of skipping all over. Very interesting topics and talks. I hear this term, the Yentl of Brooklyn. It's the woman that has, like, you go to when Jewish community moves to, like, a Jewish family moves to a Jewish community, they go see the Yentl. Is that a fair statement?
Well, it's Yenta.
Yenta, right?
Yenta. A Yenta is somebody who talks a lot and spreads all kinds of.
So I call my realtor here the Jewish Yenta of Las Vegas.
Right.
She's from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Right. And Mary Perry, she's the #1 realtor, and now she's the president of the Realtor Association in Las Vegas. And when I called her, I knew her from being here in 2009, but I'm back down here. Excuse me. I went to buy a house, and she's literally like telling me I'm going to buy this. No, Davrick, oh my God, you're not listening to me. You're not going to buy a house here. You're going to buy a house here. You're going to sign the paperwork. I need you over my office right now. I was like, okay. Like, I didn't really have I didn't even see it.
Yenta means gossiper.
Okay, gossiper. Okay.
Gossiper.
Okay. Well, I would say she doesn't gossip, but she's the who's who here in Vegas.
Yeah.
So I send everybody to her. Like, if you need anything, she knows the who's who.
Yeah,
you know,
she mixes in everybody's business.
She's in everybody's business. She's the.
That's what
Mary Perry's a contact person.
Perfect definition of a Yenta.
Yeah. So, and now you're here at Sticky Paws.
Yeah.
And you're CFO. You're loving life. You guys are very successful. You open up studios in Florida and anywhere else. Texas?
Working on it.
What?
Working on it.
How'd I know that?
Yeah.
I can read minds.
Yeah.
I'm a Jedi Knight.
Well, you know, about 2 years ago, we had a business right down the road here on Rainbow, and we sold it after 12 years of running the store. We had a mailbox store. Half the mailbox store was mailboxes and mail, UPS, FedEx, all that stuff. The other half of the store was fine jewelry. It was a combination of fine jewelry. And
We're talking Rolex fine jewelry?
We're talking Rolex fine jewelry,
Okay,
diamonds.
You know what my dream is?
I've been a jeweler since 1975.
My dream is the Paul Newman Rolex.
Okay, good luck.
I know where one is. You going to buy it for me?
Make sure it's real.
It is. It's a grip.
Because China is making
No, it's real.
copies.
It's the guy has owned it for 15 years, and they already had it authenticated. And
is it a two-tone or is it a solid gold?
I can't. No, it's not a gold. It's the
stainless steel.
It's the one.
It's got gold in the center. Or
no, it's the Paul Newman. Wasn't it a Daytona? Did he have a Paul Newman?
He had a Daytona.
It's a Paul Newman Daytona. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, stainless steel.
Yeah.
Okay. What they want for?
Oh man, it's up in the 300,000.
Oh, it's too much money.
But I mean, it'd be great to have that.
Okay.
You gonna buy it for me for Christmas?
See my Rolex?
I see your Rolex. I left my watch at home, but I have an AP. But
I built this watch.
You built that?
I built it.
So that's what I get. That's you're taking care of all your family here.
This is the president, the Rolex president, solid 18 karat gold, and I did all the diamond work on it. This watch is from 1984.
Do you have all the papers in box?
No, not anymore, but I've had the watch since 1984. So, and it's never come off my wrist.
Only when you go to bed.
Nope. I wear it to sleep.
You don't wear it in the shower, though, do you?
No, I take it off.
Okay.
But I leave it on the sink.
Yeah.
And then put it back on again. But yeah.
So I want to talk about, before we end, I told you, talk about your background, incredible stories. I know you were running books for the mafia as a kid.
It wasn't books, but we took numbers.
Took numbers. You had a fantastic, amazing life. You had a tragic story with a family.
Yeah.
Came from nothing. Came from the Holocaust. You're a survivor, which is horrible. Now I want to switch over to I focus on the red pill, which is relationships, dating, modern times.
Okay.
You were on a show recently, and I texted. You were talking to a gal.
Yeah.
And I was watching the show, It was called 702 Problem Solvers. And I watch YouTube on my TV.
Yeah.
Like I'm reading my books, I'm studying, I'm working. And I was like, 702 Problem Solvers, Dave's show.
Dave.
They're live.
Yeah.
I saw you on the show. I was like, there's Uncle Marvin.
Yeah.
And there's a gal on there that we know. And I've been on the show.
Very successful.
Very successful. She's worth 15
real
million.
estate.
Beautiful gal.
Tremendous.
But she's never been married.
She was also on a reality show.
Yeah, Marry Millions.
Yeah, Marry Millions.
And she's never been married. It was funny because Uncle Marvin asked her, why haven't you been married?
Right.
Well, I guess I haven't met the perfect man. It's up to God, blah, blah, blah.
No perfect.
And then he goes, there's no perfect man. Yeah, there is. He's like, no, there's not. And I texted Dave. I said, she'll meet a perfect man. His name is Jesus. He'll meet him one day.
He wasn't perfect.
No. But that's the problem with modern day society.
Exactly.
Modern women want it all. They want this fairy tale relationship that they see on the Netflix show. And here's the other thing you brought up earlier about love. You know what men want? We want respect and peace.
You know what it is? Can I interrupt you a second? It's not about love.
No.
You know what it is? You have to like the person you're with.
I believe you have to give love. You have to love your wife, give love to her, but I don't need love from her. I need her to respect and peace. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
We're out there. We're
It's also give and take.
Right. But nowadays, 51% of the marriages are divorced. 80%, almost 80% of the time, the woman's filing for divorce.
Yes.
And you know what? My number one response I get from a lot of women, other than the infidelity from the husband. Well, there was just no energy, and I just didn't love him anymore. And I go, what do you mean you didn't love him? Right? Their kids are sitting there. Well, I have to be happy. Who said you have to be happy? Where in your vows does it say you have to be happy? So I get a lot of pushback from the community, from women, because let me explain my situation. I grew up old school, but I'm a modern guy living in a traditional mindset. I'm all about, I'll do what it takes to take care of my family financially. I'll be the provider, the protector. Now, I understand in modern times, it takes double income sometimes to survive, right? Sorry. It takes a double income sometimes to survive, right? And I get that. But what I don't like is the masculine attitude mindset from these women that want to wear the pants. They want to zip their pants in the front, not the back. Look, it's not about control. You're trying to emasculate a man, and that marriage is never going to work. You proved that twice. You talked about it.
Right.
So what do you think needs to change, or why do you think there's so many problems with today's modern relationships?
There's three, in my opinion, and in my experience, there are three reasons for divorce in a marriage. It's money, or sex, or just plain incompatibility. Those are the three main reasons for a divorce. Most of the time, it's about money. Then second is the sex. For some reason, women decide to use it as a weapon. You know, you get into an argument, they cut it off. They pick the time and the place. I mean, they control, like I said, they control everything. And it's not just the sex, it's the giving. And they just, for some reason, decide they're going to stop giving. And I'm talking from my experiences, you know. And with my last wife, with this one here, it's been incredible. It's been an incredible wife for over 20 years.
Do you think it's because of how your wife was raised?
Yes, she was raised by a European Greek family. And got that European thinking. You take care of the man. The man comes first, above the kids, above everything.
See, that's what I was talking about. I see nowadays that the women are putting the children before their husband.
But women today don't want kids.
Yeah, true. A lot of them don't.
A lot of them don't want kids, and they don't know what they're missing out on. I have 4 kids. I have 6 grandchildren. God bless them all. And they're terrific. They're great. Not have kids, I can't even fathom the idea of not having kids. And I had my first 2 children, I was 22 years old, and I had 2 kids already. At 22, 23. 2 kids.
Wow.
A boy and a girl.
And that was normal back then.
Absolutely normal.
So today's modern society, they're waiting.
They were 35, 40 years old.
What about all this gender stuff going on?
Oh, please. You know, don't get me started on politics. Is it okay if I...
Yeah, you can talk about anything. This is an uncensored show. And this is why I get so much pushback.
I don't understand. You know, I voted for Kennedy. I was a Democrat. And then it changed. Everything changed. And Reagan come along. Democrats weren't working. It wasn't working. So I voted. I switched parties, and I went to become a Republican. Today, there is no Democratic Party. They're communists. They're socialists. They're fascists. That's what they are.
Why? Okay, this is the question I have. Why is the Hollywood Jewish community so socialist and not Republican? Why do you think that is?
Brainwashing. They live in their own bubble. I can tell you from firsthand, my son, my oldest boy, lives in Calabasas in the entertainment industry.
So he lives by the Kardashians.
In the same community. Has a $12 million house, living on top of the hill in Calabasas, and lives in a bubble. I have lots of fights with him about politics. They are brainwashed. They are living in a bubble that they think. But when you get down to the bottom of the hill, Calabasas, right? And you get down by the 101, and you see the homeless laying on the streets in Calabasas, you don't want to come to a rude awakening that something is wrong here?
That whole state's imploding.
Yes.
I don't think that state can ever be saved. I think it'd take.
Well, first of all, they're about $50 billion in the hole. You know, negative. This guy Newsom is a piece of work.
So now this election coming up.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm voting. I don't have a problem saying it. I'm voting for Trump.
Trump's my man.
Look, and I explain this to people. I see in podcasters, Kennedy. Look, let me explain something to you. I'm going to tell the viewers this. We are so far off in the ocean in a bad situation with a recession in the economy. It's going to take an extreme right-winged conservative Republican president to get us back to zero. DeSantis as a backup is an option if something happens with Trump, but he doesn't have the moxie worldwide. This Kennedy guy for the Democrats, the moderate, that ain't going to help us. We're so look. If Clinton was in office, I didn't care.
He's a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Right. If Clinton was in office, I didn't like his administration. Didn't do a lot of great things. Economy was so-so.
Can't blame him. I mean,
right. But if Kennedy came in when Clinton was in office,
what's wrong with that?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's funny. They go after Trump. Because of some charge 20 years ago.
Come on.
But Clinton's getting blowjobs from Monica Lewinsky, and nobody bats an eye.
He was doing everything with her.
Kennedy was with Marilyn
Monroe. In the White House.
Well, in the White House, in the Oval Office. He got a royal treatment, right? But the point is that nobody's going to put us back on track other than Trump. And right. I 100%
You want to listen to me?
What?
You want to listen to me?
Yeah.
And everybody out there listening to me? I'm going to tell you something about Trump. He's a New Yorker. I'm a New Yorker. Okay? The thing you got to listen to is not his delivery. Listen to the contents of what he is saying. Don't listen to how he delivers it or his tweets or all that other stuff. He's a New Yorker. If you don't understand New Yorkers, get a little exposure. Go to New York and hang out for a couple of weeks and see what it's about. Because what he's saying, the contents of what he's saying is 1,000% on.
Right.
Not the way he delivers it. He's a billionaire for the blue-collar worker. He's a multi-billionaire that watches out for the blue-collar worker. That's all he's ever known his whole life when his father had a real estate business in the Queens, when they were only operating Queens and Brooklyn. Trump expanded into Manhattan, and his father told him not to do it. Now, how do I know all that? Is I had a conversation with Trump years ago. I don't want to get into it, but in Mar-a-Lago. My wife and I had the privilege of being invited to Mar-a-Lago. And we went down there and we sat with Melania and Donald before he thought about being president. And a very interesting guy. I love this man. He tells you like it is. You can take it to the bank. You shake his hand, it's like, that's it. It's done. He's like the old mafia guys. If the mafia guys told you, I'll take care of it, it's taken care of.
I think what happened is his generations became so soft, and they have thin skin. They get offended, and this is what I tell people: have thick skin and a soft heart. Don't take things personal. I loved his tweets because he's right between the eyes, and this is my point, Marvin, Uncle Marvin. My point is, if you don't tell people what they need to hear and you sugarcoat it, it's going to go right over their head.
If you don't like what he's saying, don't listen.
But the fact that he hits you between the eyes,
absolutely,
and you get offended, maybe you need to be offended, absolutely, because that's what needs to happen.
Absolutely.
And so what the left media does, the old school media, they throw all these lies out, fabricate stories, try to create misinformation, and cause chaos.
Well, the difference between Trump and the left-wingers is that the left-wingers, it's all about power. They want to control you.
But
Trump is a patriot. Trump wants a free country. He wants a prosperous, free, war-excluded, no war. He's not a warmonger. He wants peace.
But the left wants to be controlled because they don't want to work. They want everything given to them. So they want a big government. They don't want to work. They want handouts. They won't say it. They want their college education paid for.
Yeah.
They want everything handed to them on a platter. They want socialism.
Right.
Here, ready for this equality statement? I'm gonna let you guys know this. I hope blue-haired people are listening to this. Okay. Let me tell you about socialism. Socialism states that it's equality among pay. So you're telling me I'm gonna get the same pay as Elon Musk. That's what you're telling me. Communism, the government owns everything. Socialism, now it's like, okay, we're just going to pay everybody the same. Watch this. I'm a multimillionaire. I'm busting my ass. And you're going to pay Joe Schlepp with blue hair the same amount of money as me, and he's not even working. What's my motivation and incentive to build an industry? Remember,
It's communism.
the Industrial Revolution, free enterprise in America. That's where it started. You have anybody in America can own a business and create wealth. But you know what? They're sitting there like this, Marvin. Where's my government check? Where's my cheese?
Let's go back. Let's go back to 1864. Okay, Civil War, right? 1864, 1865, Civil War. Why? Because Democrats wanted to keep the slaves.
Thank you.
Okay, people don't know this, but there were so many black plantation owners.
Yeah.
Who had slaves.
3,500 plantation owners were black.
That's correct.
And they had 20 to 30,000 slaves.
Exactly. I'm surprised you know that.
Well, I study it because I'm half black, and I wanted to know why all the black Democrats were always going against the Republicans. And I reverse engineer everything, and I said, wait a minute.
But you know the blacks were originally Republicans.
They were. And then Lyndon B. Johnson twisted their heads up.
Exactly.
And created liberalism and messed us up,
but
lied to us.
After 1865, what happened from 1865 to 1875? Who came along? The KKK.
Jim Crow.
1865 with the white hoods.
Yep. Jim Crow laws came into effect, which is Democrat. Yep.
Democrats.
Yep.
Right? Roosevelt. Right? He was a socialist.
They really messed up America. But now,
Democrats.
Now what's happened is the black community has figured it out now.
That's correct.
Because they threw Obama in. This is what's funny. Oh, first black president. And I said, no. He's the first biracial. Well, he's black. There you go again. See, now you don't want it to be about race, but you won't acknowledge the white side. I'm biracial, so I'm offended. Well, you're not black then. Well, see, now you're getting all twisted up. It's not about race. Dr. Martin Luther King said, I have a dream that one day my children will be judged by the character of their content, but not by the color of their skin, by the character of their content.
That's correct.
And you make everything about race.
You want to talk about race? I'm going to give you a little statistic. You want to talk about minorities? How many Jewish people do you think there are in the entire world?
How many?
Tell me, what do you think?
Oh,
now I'm talking about the entire planet.
Oh, there's got to be. Well, there's 7 billion people on the planet?
Yeah.
So, a billion?
How about if I tell you it's less than 15 million?
Really?
Yeah. There are less than 15 million Jews in the entire world. And you're telling me we own everything financially? Give me a break.
BlackRock owns everything.
You want to talk about discrimination? We've been discriminated since Egyptian times.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Let my people go. We were the original slaves.
Do you want reparations?
We built the pyramids.
Do you want reparations?
I wouldn't touch a reparation if you hand it to me on a platter. I work for my money, and I have self-pride that I did it. I don't need your handout. I'll do it myself, and believe me, after 3 marriages, I rebuilt myself twice because those divorces killed me. My last one cost me $3.5 million, and I started all over again in 2002.
So you rebuilt yourself 3 times?
3 times. This is twice.
Wow.
I rebuilt myself twice.
Wow.
Two 2 divorces.
So, any last words? I appreciate you coming on the show. I know we got to end.
Well, this was a pleasure.
But I want you to say, is there any last words or messages you can say to the audience? And I'm sure this is going to get a lot of views of anybody that just any positive words of affirmations, positive words of influence that you can say to any men or women or anybody out there to let them know that they can be successful.
Well, 2 things. First of all, find your best friend and marry them. Number 2 is work hard. It'll come back to you. Find something that you enjoy the most. Work hard at it, and it'll come to you. I found my niche, but my niche was just business in general. I've had so many different businesses, it's ridiculous. And not all of them were successful. I learned from those, though. The ones that didn't make it, I learned from not to do. And from that, I learned how to become not successful. Listen, success is not a destiny. It's a journey. You can go up higher and higher and higher. There's no reach. There's no end game.
No ceiling.
No ceiling at all. It's a journey. And what is success? It's self-pride, loving this country. I love this country. It has given me so many opportunities. I became a pilot. I'm a private pilot. I became a citizen, which was the glorious day of my life when I turned 18 years old, standing in a federal building in Manhattan. I stuck my right arm up and said, I pledge allegiance to the flag, and I meant it. Okay? This country has given me so much that I don't know what I would do for this country. I mean, I would give my life for sure. But don't fuck with us.
I love it. I love it.
Don't fuck with us.
I love it.
Because you got guys like me out there saying, this is the greatest country in the world. I have been to many, many countries traveling. Every time I come home here, I kiss the ground that I live here. And so just work hard. It'll come to you. But be serious and take it slow. Ashbed, as they say in Italian. Relax, slow down, and calculate everything out. The one thing I've learned in my life financially, don't get into debt. Don't get into debt.
Yeah, we talked about you buying my car.
Yeah, right. So what are you, nuts on payment of that? You know how many women I could buy for that?
Right on. Well, hey, thank you, sir.
Oh, my pleasure.
It.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, guys. Make sure you follow the channel, subscribe, like this video, share this video, and we'll see you back soon. Stay strong.